Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of RevTalks. Today we're joined with Akil. How's it going today?
It's going pretty good, Patrick. How about you?
Doing pretty well. I appreciate you jumping on here. Would you mind giving us a high-level overview about Corsera and what you guys do as well in the software space?
Yeah, sure. The Coursera Health, we're actually developing AI, prediction model to diagnose patients that might experience a cardiovascular incident throughout their lives using our proprietary artificial intelligence platform.
And I know we briefly talked about that too, obviously, before the recording. Can you kind of talk about what has all gotten into that actual software? It's a predictive model. You guys are using AI. You guys are sort of looking at trends, seeing health statistics, things like that. Can you briefly talk about how that kind of operates in the market, who you guys kind of service, and how that solution really kind of plays a role, especially moving forward in the healthcare industry?
Yeah, sure. This will impact, worldwide patients. And essentially the goal here is to, take the take the reactive approach that's only currently available for cardiovascular diseases and provide a proactive approach. So essentially, there's a two prongs approach where we would provide AI predicted model based on our proprietary platform, Clotho, to determine whether a certain patient might experience a cardiovascular incident throughout their lifetime. And if that's to be determined, yes, then we would then put them proactively on a medication, once annual dosage of the PCSK9 drug that we're developing that would help them essentially proactively to, one, avoid that or at least limit the negative impact that it might have on the patient throughout their lifespan.
I see. And I know we also talked too about you guys being funded as well. Can you kind of talk briefly about that, what that process has kind of been like? You guys are obviously servicing a mid-market or up-market segment. So when you obviously sell to these healthcare companies, what ends up happening probably is you have to assign certain medications with the actual, if the software predicts that XYZ is going to happen in somebody's lifetime. Are you guys partnered with medication companies or how does it kind of work, up market?
Yes, we're currently backed by multiple different venture capitalist fund companies. One of the companies our mainly backer is Population Health Partners. However, we just came out of stealth last year, so we are still in the early stage of development. However, we are already in the clinic. So, as we grow and scale the company, we would then determine to go commercial. I think with stealth, we're in the early stages of clinical phases. Usually the drug discovery is a long process. Typically it takes anywhere from 5 to 10 years, depending on the positive or negative outcomes of the clinical trials. Where we're being the early stage as a startup, I think it's too early to determine, how long it will take.
And a decent amount of people that actually watch these videos are in the space where they're servicing a mid-market or up-market company, or they're trying to get funding with their software or with whatever maybe vertical they have. What is some piece of advices you might actually be able to give those types of people that are looking for not just necessarily funding, but to really have a strategic plan in the market to be able to get an idea backed behind, some money or some venture capital firm?
Yeah, I'm obviously, I would say, I think, this is our approach is strictly a strong science-based, proven therapies around RNAi therapeutic platform. The journey of the drug discovery, it's not easy. So I think, having a strategic plan that's aligned with your business and science objective, it's a key factor in being successful in this kind of environment. And also be able to pivot, as the outcome totally depends on the clinical trials and the outcome of your drugs or therapies that you're trying to provide in the clinical trials. If you're successful, then you can move to this next phase. But you have to always predict that and have the plan that what if it's not successful, then have a secondary plan to pursue a different avenues of continuing the business.
I see. And when it actually comes down to building the software, do you guys have a development team that is mainly in-house? Do you guys kind of outsource some of that work? How does that process roll for you guys?
Yeah, so we have a team of internal developers that we leverage. We natively use the cloud platform, but we have an internal team that actually helps. They're scientists and they have done this before in the past with the different companies. So, the short answer is yes, we do have an internal team that helps develop with our platform.
And what exactly is your role within the actual company, just so the audience can hear it as well?
Yeah, sure. So I'm actually on the IT consultant for the company. And I actually work directly underneath the current CEO, co-CEO of Corsera Health at my previous company where I worked at Alnylam Pharmaceutical for almost 10 years, where he actually was a CEO there as well. So my current responsibility is helping the company grow and scale as the company is, startup mode, to making sure the IT technology and tool sets and platforms are aligned with the business and scientific needs. And obviously, we're in the regulatory space, so making sure the cybersecurity and the compliance is at the center of everything that we do.
Absolutely, that makes total sense. And what kind of current market initiatives are you guys using to sign more customers? I know you mentioned you're obviously in charge of growth and pushing the business forward in terms of revenue. What does that kind of look like for you guys right now? What are some current actions you guys are actually taking?
So I think current focus it's strictly been around advancing the science and the clinical focus. We're currently in a phase one. I think the outcome of that will determine which direction we go. But currently, we are growing the company by bringing on employees in key strategic areas that's needed to help advance the science, but also from the business perspective as well.
I see. And are you guys actively seeking out more development talent on the software side of things with that kind of growth? Or are you more mentioning when it comes down to customer acquisition, making sure this is installed in more facilities? Are those kind of the two fronts you're talking about? Or maybe I got that one wrong.
We're actually in the early stages. So I think, we're not there where we're actually building out the commercial team. Where we are, we're kind of building out the internal team that will help us get to that level, such as like clinical operations, regulatory team, finance teams, and mainly just a operations team, a business operations kind of functions.
That makes sense. And how do most of the customers that you guys have currently, how have they found you? What's kind of the route where they would actually come from to be introduced to you, or maybe where you guys have met with each other?
So we currently don't have any customers. Like I said, we're still in the early development stages. But once our therapies actually we go commercial, which is years out the way, depending on the outcome of the clinical trials, then we would, it would be an FDA approved process that we'd have to go through. And like I said, I have gone through this with multiple different drugs at Alnylam Pharmaceutical. And, at the span of over 10 years, that journey was obviously not a straightforward journey. It was the bumps and hiccups. So I think, it's too early to tell right now, but obviously, we're very focused on advancing the science at the moment. I think we know once we have a therapy that's approved, the impact that it's going to have globally. And once we get to that point before, then we would actually look into setting up a commercial infrastructure that would help support that, similar to what I had held at Alnylam Pharmaceutical.
Absolutely. And especially when it comes down to building a team and really kind of making sure everything is staying on top of the objectives, with you mentioned it being a couple of years down the line, things kind of moving at a not slower basis, but a typical basis for this type of industry. How do you keep things pushing along, obviously directing the team and while you're reporting as well? How do you kind of keep people actually on time? How do you make sure that the company objectives are continuously quarter over quarter kind of being moved along and pushed along in the right direction? What's kind of your philosophy on that?
I think, one of my philosophy has been, I'm on the IT side, so it's, having the strict financial discipline is important, and aligning the IT alignment more importantly with the business and science so that it all moves parallel. And obviously cybersecurity, keeping that in the center of it, simply because, there's a huge oversight of the regulatory and compliance requirements for our industry.
Makes total sense. And as of right now, what are some objectives that you guys are really looking at taking on as you guys move through 2026?
I mean, one of the objectives is to continue on finish our clinical phase completely by the end of this year. And, if things goes well, like I said, then we would proceed to move to the next phase.
Absolutely. Sweet. That pretty much kind of wraps up all my initial questions. I appreciate you jumping on. Where can we find you guys on the actual internet? Where can we figure out the website and everything like that?
Yeah, sure. I mean, we're on the web and we're also on LinkedIn. It's Corsera.com. The name of the company is Corsera Health.
Absolutely. I appreciate you so much for jumping on today, Keel.
Thank you very much, Patrick. You too.